All right, let's get to the big story. This morning on the big story, we want to revisit something that happened over the weekend. That's on Saturday. Of course, there was talk about Women's Day having happened. And some folks were talking about wife battering, the practice that some people feel is okay for some reason. I don't know why. And there's a member of parliament, particularly, who made remarks that tantamounted to the fact, according to him, that wife battering is okay. Because in his words, women at times need to be realigned, and we were not too sure what that was about. That MP confirmed joining us this morning to talk to us so he can clarify what exactly he did mean. He's not here yet. He's not picking his phone calls, but we'll keep proceeding. But in the meantime, let's take a look at this story where he made these particular remarks.
In March 2016, Kabonesa Ninsima, an expectant mother, had her hands and ears chopped off by her husband Adolf Businje after disagreement on how the proceeds of a maize harvest should have been shared. Kabonesa's case is just one of the more extreme ones that highlight the issue of violence against women in Uganda. Now those who have been at the forefront of fighting violence against women have got a new champion who just happens to be the most powerful person in the country, President Yoweri Museveni. According to President Museveni, men that beat women are cowards who should face the full wrath of the law.
Men who are cowards are the ones who beat women. Why do you beat women? Why don't you, if you want to fight, why don't you look for fellow men and you fight? It is, they call it in English, being a bully. Being a bully. Why do you beat somebody who is weak?
Museveni's statements have given fresh hope to women activists who would like to see law enforcement agencies and government departments get tougher on violence against women.
We should be able to quickly punch in to ensure that the institutions responsible for access to justice are adequately, sufficiently capacitated, both in terms of human resource and finances.
A 2014 report from the Uganda Bureau of Statistics revealed that 59% of women had faced gender-based violence of some sort within their families. The majority of these cases were reported in Busoga, Northern Region, with the Western Central Region following closely. Rita Chilo, the Executive Director of Uganda Women's Network, says the passing of the Marriage and Divorce Bill will be the ultimate solution to dealing with cases of gender-based violence in families.
Those men he called stupid are doing some of these things because some of these laws are not there. The widows who have been thrown off their land that they worked with their husbands. The women who are being thrown out of their homes because they have not been officially married. That is an attitudinal problem. Otherwise, we would be having the marriage law today.
When asked for their views on the matter, members of parliament expressed a number of varied opinions.
Their dignity should not be tampered with. It should not be underlooked. It shouldn't be degraded. And beating does that in every sense of the word.
It is good to separate in a very clear manner without causing any harm to any of the two.
So before we talk about, violence, domestic violence, let us talk about discipline and mutual respect in our marriages. First, that should be the bedrock.
As a man, you need to discipline your wife. You need to, touch her a bit and you tackle her and you beat her somehow, to really streamline her.
Habad Ziwa, NTV.
All right, so you've had your representatives, and one particular one who said, look, as a man, you need to touch your wife, you need to discipline her a bit. And that has gotten people mad. International media has picked it up as well. And they are talking about a member of parliament who thinks it is okay for a man to beat his wife, in his words, to discipline the wife. Like I was saying earlier on, this MP promised to come here this morning and clarify. But his chair is still empty. He's not picking his phone. So we are waiting to see if he will make it. But of course, we had a plan B. So in a short while, we'll be joined by somebody who is involved in the women's movement struggle to try and uplift women. We'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, you can get in touch with me and share your thoughts. There's a number that's going to run on your screen. Do call and let's talk about this. Why do some men think wife battering is okay? We understand that there are certain women who say, look, for me, if my husband doesn't beat me, he does not love me. Now, do these women say this because they mean it, or is it because culturally that's what has been inoculated in them, or that's what they believe? I don't know. So for an MP like this one to say this kind of thing, and that's why it would have been good for him to be here to tell us, is it because this is what he grew up seeing? Is it because, you know, this is the right thing according to him, or what's the genesis of this? Anyway, so do get in touch and share your thoughts. We are going to be joined by Perry Aritua. Perry is the Executive Director of Women's Democracy Network. She's been involved in the struggle to ameliorate women, to try and make their lives better, reaching out to them, training them, helping them up to stand up for their rights. But clearly, as some people are fighting for the rights of women, others are doing everything they can to try and keep them below the rugs, at least based on what this member of parliament did say. So, I don't know, are you a man out there that thinks this is an okay thing to do? And well, what should we do? Because you see, ultimately, at the end of the day, while women are fighting for the betterment of the women, it's important that the men come on board. Why? Because for most of the time, it is men that are perpetrators of these evils, that are meting out violence against the women. So it's good that men stand up and say no to some of these things and call out fellow men and say, guys, can we style up? You know, it was good to hear the president say that, you know, he despises men who batter their wives. So that coming from the fountain of honor was encouraging. But ultimately, does that translate into action? You know, because it's one thing to say it is a bad thing for men to batter their wives. It is despisable, it is despicable for men to lay their hands on their ladies. But then what? Can there be action at the end of the day? Can something be done? Are laws strong enough? Are men being reached out to? Because again, honestly speaking, sometimes it's because certain men grew up seeing certain things. And this is not to excuse, you know, some of the evils that are done by men. But you know, when a man grew up seeing his father batter his wife, inevitably it gets into his system and he thinks this is the way things should be done. You know, so him, that young man now who grows up and gets married, it comes naturally for him to beat his wife. You know, not that it's a good thing. So how are we helping these men to get over these ills that are happening in society? Because they're ills without a doubt. But how do we reach out to them and help them to see better, to know better? All right, so there's a number on your screen. Get in touch with us and share your thoughts, even as we wait to be joined by one of the guests and hopefully the MP that made these remarks. That's the Honorable Onesimus Twinamasko. He's the member of parliament for Bugangaizi, and he's the one that said, as a man, it is you know, good to discipline your wife. Hopefully he will come eventually. Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
What's your name, sir?
I'm calling Emma.
Emma. Yes, Emma.
I'm calling from Lira.
From Lira?
Yes.
Talk to us, Emma.
Now, well, there are some conditions that can make a man beat a woman.
There are conditions that can make a man beat a woman?
Yes.
What are those conditions? I'll request my colleagues to just shoot the volume up so that we can hear Emma clearly. I'm struggling to hear him. Go ahead, Emma.
No, I'm saying, cannot get my woman in an adult, and then just you.
And then you just?
Yeah, hello?
You're saying you can't get your woman in adultery and then what?
In a committing adult, everything else.
Oh my goodness, did we just lose Emma? Emma, I hope you can call again. We want to hear your thoughts, because Emma was saying there are conditions that make a man beat his woman, and he had begun to justify that if he catches his woman committing adultery, then we lost him along the way. Of course, I wanted to ask, so what happens if it is the wife who has caught you, the man, in adultery? Should you be beaten too? Hello, good morning.
Yes,
what's your name, Chief? Hello?
Yes,
what's your name, sir? Hello, do you hear me?
This is on.
Your name again, sir? Oh my goodness. I hope the connection problem is that side and not here. But if it is, hopefully we'll fix it. Let's try and speak to somebody else. Okay, we lost that one. Again, to remind you, when you call us, kindly lessen the volume on your TV set to 0, actually, so that we don't get feedback. That way, that happens when you call and you leave your volume on. I know some of you like to hear yourselves on TV talking, but that can't happen, unfortunately. So please, when you call us, reduce the volume on your TV set so that we can hear you loud and clear without those technical glitches. Let's try somebody else. Hello, good morning. Could you reduce the volume on your TV set? I am very well, thank you. What's your name, sir?
Hello. Yeah, Kamada.
Kamada, you said? Your line is breaking, but carry on and share your thoughts.
The line is not clear.
Okay, I hear you now. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, please connect. But now, the law is telling we need to clarify the law. Because it always favor one side. And if you are painted the colors of all men in Uganda, they are really very bad people. It's not like that.
Who is the law favoring? I didn't hear that. Your line broke. Who did you say the law is favoring? Sorry, I didn't hear that bit.
Women.
The law is favoring women.
So much. Are you not seeing?
Give me an example.
Those are our mothers, our sisters, but the law favors.
Okay, we lost Kamada, if I got the name right, who says the law is favoring women. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Hello, Joel.
Good morning. What's your name, sir?
Hey, this is John Bosco. I'm calling from Bali.
Yes, John Bosco.
Yes, now I don't support this idea of men beating their women. The women are like the God gave a man, a woman. The women are from our own root. So if we beat them, it's like a father beating a child. We should treat them. We should treat the women like our fellow beings, like human beings. A woman is not like a slave in the family, but she's a support to a man. So the issue of beating is like, as the president said, the coward. It is needful because you can't just treat your fellow as a slave in the home. That one, I don't support it. Thank you, Joel.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thoughts, John Bosco. John Bosco says we should treat women as equals. The first callers perhaps had a different view. Emma was saying some conditions make men beat their wives. He was trying to justify, then the line went off. Hello, good morning. Sorry, we lost that person. Please, when you call, remember to reduce the volume on your TV set. Hello, good morning. What's your name, sir? Your name again, you said is? We're having challenges with sound this morning. But anyway, keep trying. I hope no one is sabotaging. No one is sabotaging us this morning. Good morning. Hello.
Yes, morning.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Dennis.
Dennis, you said?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead and share your thoughts, Dennis. Go ahead, Dennis. Oh my goodness, our sound is pathetic this morning. My apologies to you. I am struggling to hear people calling. I don't know if the problem is here or outside that side where you are, and yet we want to hear you clearly. It's important.
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you reduce the volume on your TV set, please?
Yeah, my view is that it is not really good to beat a wife.
Okay, what's your name, sir?
My name.
Your name is?
Namara Frank, calling from Kanungu district.
Yes, Namara. Namara, now that you call from Kanungu, I have heard, I don't know how far true it is, but some people have said that Bachiga women say it is good for their men to beat them. Have you heard about that narrative at all?
I've heard.
Is it true? And then we lost Namara. Oh my goodness. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Yes, hello, please.
Good morning. What's your name, Chief?
I'm Geoffrey calling from Mombali.
Yes, Geoffrey, talk to us.
Thank you for the program.
Thank you.
It is not a very good idea for really men, women. If are not men beating women, just even fighting itself is not a good idea. But however, there are circumstances where a woman can really provoke. There are cases especially where the woman even has more money than the man.
So when a woman has more money than the man should beat the woman. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying in that circumstance, now the woman tends to be the head. So therefore, the man can be pushed, you know, to be provoked and to be looked. And in that circumstance, you can find a situation where these people can fight. And I've known some families where women are really, really very provocative. Of course, I cannot talk about the names of the families on radio, on TV. But I can tell you, it is myself, I don't really support it. And but I've seen situations where these people can find themselves really fighting out of something very simple. And I've also known of cases where actually women batter the men. But I don't hear people talking about that. I think it's also time to discuss about that so that the law can be balanced for both sides.
Okay, thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joel. Yeah.
All right, we've been joined by Perry Aritua. Perry is the Executive Director of Women's Democracy Network. She's also a lawyer. Good morning, Perry.
Good morning, Joel, and good morning, viewers.
All right, just before we delve into the discussion, you found me having a chit-chat with some callers. You'll be amazed at what some of our people say. I want to replay this particular clip where this MP was saying that women should be disciplined sometimes. You know, they need to be realigned. In his words, that's the Honorable Onesimus Twinamasiko. He's the Bugangaizi Member of Parliament. He confirmed coming here this morning. He's not been picking my phone calls. I don't know what happened along the way.
I wish he would come and really explain himself.
I told him, look, this is an opportunity for you to clarify things because it's gone everywhere. The international media has picked it up as well. I said, come and I'll give you the platform to clarify. He said, I will come. He's not here. Anyhow, let's just take a look at this clip and we'll be right back.
No, the president actually, I think, erred somehow. Because as a man, you need to discipline your wife. You need to, you know, touch her a bit and you tackle her and you beat her somehow, you know, to really streamline her, to enable her really get on the line. Yeah, you need to do some little bit of beating. It shows love even. You know, it shows love some societies. Otherwise, if you don't, then it means you are not bothered. Whatever your wife does, you know, you touch her and you beat her somehow.
Wow. That gentleman is called the Honorable Onesimus Twinamasiko. He's the Bugangaizi Member of Parliament. What do you make of his remarks?
I'm even shocked you call him honorable, because that title goes with certain expectations in terms of how you must behave, what you must say, you know, and he's a leader. And I'm assuming he has a following in his constituency of Bugangaizi. One, I'm shocked, but also very disturbed and very disappointed, because if you look at the last report of the police in 2014, sexual violence, particularly defilement, was one of the highest reported cases. And you know, sexual violence is also domestic violence. So what perturbs me is when leaders make such irresponsible statements, and yet they have a following. You will find some people who actually believe in what he's saying, thinking that that's the right thing to do. Besides, he's a legislator and we have a Domestic Violence Act in this country. So I would assume that he has read that act and he knows that the law must guide his words and his behavior. So it's disappointing, particularly to many of the survivors of domestic violence, some of whom have lost their lives because of his, you know, words like tackle her bit. I don't even know what he means, because marriage is supposed to be a union of two people who respect each other, where the man is instructed to love his wife and the wife in turn will respect him. So I don't know where he gets his sense of what a husband should do. I hear discipline. You know, my first thinking was, is this a child he's talking about? And even when you're disciplining children these days, you must use you must reason with them so that in the end they understand that maybe what they have done is not right. You know, so even the word discipline, for me, it's like he's referring to a child, which is not the case.
I know you crisscross the country interacting with women and helping get them out of the situations that they grapple with. What do you find is the cause for this? Because this is not the first time, shocking as it is. Well, of course, this is coming from a legislator, but it's not the first time that you hear a man say such things. You found I had picked a couple of calls. You know, one caller, for example, said some conditions make men beat their wives, and he quoted adultery as an example. Unfortunately, he got cut off because I had to ask him, so what happens if the wife catches you committing adultery? Should she beat you too? And a couple of others were also trying to pull it out. You know, another gentleman said the law is favoring women and so on. Do you imagine this is tethered to our cultural beliefs or what some men grow up seeing? What explains this?
I think there are a number of causes. One is what they see, because research has shown that if a child grows up in a family where conflicts are settled using violence, physical, emotional, that's the only thing they know. So they will grow up thinking, even when they get married, that the only way to settle a conflict with your spouse is to beat. So it's what they see, and that's why for me it would have been interesting to really do some more research on the background of this member of parliament, because you cannot give what you have not got, you know. So if you didn't have ways of settling conflict in a manner that you communicate with your spouse, if you always saw your parents shouting and fighting, that's what you know. And then secondly, there's also drunkenness, you know, which is also a cause of violence, because when you're drunk, your senses are not normal. And that's why most times someone will say, I killed because I was not of sober mind. And those are the extreme cases. But there are also cases where poverty can lead to violence because it leads to conflict, and then someone thinks that the only way to deal with the issue is to fight. Then there was a gentleman in Bale who said at times women earn more and whatever. You know, those for me are really not causes. It's how do you communicate with your spouse, you know, so that at the end of the day, you're able to live amicably. So those are just some of the causes of violence. But also patriarchy. You know, there are people who, and I think the MP, for me, he exuded a very patriarchal attitude, where they think they're supposed to control another person, you know, regardless of whether this person is their mate. They think that's because that's the only thing they have known. And some of them, because of, it's true that the African culture research that has been done, you know, in both pre-colonial and post-colonial times, one of the things that made we read is that violence at times was used to settle scores. But as we and then also because women were disempowered in terms of lack of economic opportunities, at times even when there was violence in the home, they would choose to stay because they are thinking, my children are in this home. If I go away, what happens to them? Particularly when you have an abusive spouse. What they have done to you is exactly what they'll do to your children when you're gone. You know, so of course now with girls going to school, you know, people knowing that you don't treat another human being in a very derogatory manner. Our laws, for instance, the Constitution saying you must treat each other with dignity, you know, so it becomes even a criminal offense, you know, and that's why I'm shocked that this member of parliament can utter such words, because it borders on criminality when you violate another human being. And
you talk about the law, Perry. Does the law bite hard enough? For starters, is it sufficient as it is, but also when it comes to its biteability, to use that word, do we see any progress there?
You know, because domestic violence takes place usually in a setting where there's an intimate partner, or you have a person who works for you working in a domestic setting. At times, because this person is maybe a spouse, you'll find people don't even report for very many reasons or the other. So you'll find that even when at times they are called to come and testify against their spouse, they are looking at so many factors. You know, some are thinking, okay, this is the provider in the home. If I go and testify, what happens to our economic needs as a family? You know, so there are certain laws which have been put in place, particularly the Domestic Violence Act, which gives authority to local council courts. It gives authority to magistrates courts, you know, to be able to hear these cases. But at times, due to the factors in the home, for instance, the dependency, or even the consideration of what will the public say, you know, people at times don't report. And then even we have had instances where you go and report and the police don't take you seriously. They are thinking this is a domestic matter, sort it out at home.
Or sometimes, you know, actually, after 2 days, the lady goes to police and says, release my man, now my children are starving.
That's the thing. That's why economic empowerment is one of the key factors that can help to even reduce people staying in violent relationships, because then someone knows even if I'm not here, I'll be able to fend for my family. But as I've said, at times you find the dependency syndrome, the police at times not taking these cases seriously, but also there's what they call the battery syndrome, where someone starts confusing this with love, and you see that MP actually alludes to it. You know, where someone thinks this is the right thing to do. And those are, it's as a result of continuous battery. You stay in that relationship and the person starts playing with your psychology. Actually, they use both physical and emotional violence, you know. So at the end of the day, you start feeling I am an inferior being and this is good for me. And yet it is not good, because we have seen that it starts with a slap. The next day it may go to something else. People have lost lives in this country. And that's why for me I'm really shocked that a person who even went to school, I was actually shocked that he did mass comm. You know, he went to school and he knows there are implications for his statements. You stand on national TV and make such statements. It has implications, because you have another person who may be listening to these words, thinking, if the MP can say it, then it's okay. You know, so I think it's important that leaders watch their words and they watch their actions. And I'm hoping that he can be disciplined, because what he's saying can, right now, another person may be going through violence because of utterances like that.
You see, there is the law that we have talked about, and there are challenges with its ability to bite. Police will say we are stretched, we are trying, but there are other challenges and so on. But away from using the law, many times I like to think that it's good to use a parallel approach. Have the law in place, but let's be practical too. I keep using the example of FGM, female genital mutilation. You know, it is now illegal in this country. There's law against that. But there's also you know, realization that, look, this has been around for a while. And so as we use the law, let's also reach out to these people, because it's been inoculated in them that it's a good thing to do.
I agree.
And reach out to the elders and help them understand the ills about this. And slowly but surely, there's a documentary I was watching, and a number of them have been talked to, trained, and they've come to the realization that, by the way, this thing is actually not good.
That's true.
How do we get to do that for the men? I know, you know, as I was speaking to some women, they were thinking, this is lousy, how do you do that, as if the men don't understand. But I was thinking, you know, let's be practical. Because for some of these guys, they've grown up knowing this, and to them, in their mind of minds, they actually mean well.
That's true. And
hopeless as their statements are, they think they're doing the right thing. So how do we embark on that as well? That, look, can we reach out to the men, help them understand this is actually not a good thing to do?
Yeah, and I think you've really alluded to the solution, is that, you know, laws work hand in hand with attitude change. Because if you're able to make people understand that this is a very barbaric way of living your life, and that this actually will have implications on your children, it will have implications on your life as a married couple, then maybe slowly they'll change. And that's why I like the issue that you've raised, is talking to who has influence in the community. Speak, and that's why religious leaders have actually been taking on this GBV issue very seriously, because it affects their flock. You imagine you marry a couple, you wed a couple today, and after a few days they are coming back to say, I no longer want to be with this person because he or she is violent, you know. So it takes a lot of creating awareness, but also working with those who have influence in the community, working with the imams, working with the opinion leaders, working with the elderly, you know, working with young men and women, so that at the end of the day, when they keep listening to a positive message, when they keep seeing families that are doing well because they solve conflict differently. We usually call them model families. You know, when you expose those model families to them, you are constantly actually changing attitude. It also takes at times making them see that things can be done differently. You can use documentaries, you know, of how people can solve conflict, because you're right that some people don't know any other way. If I've grown up knowing that this is the way my parents resolve conflict, I may think that's the right thing to do. So using, like now, even platforms like this, the media, social media, for people to understand there are different ways of solving conflict, and that for your actions there is you will have repercussions. The issue of accountability is very, very important in also trying to address JBV.
Okay, we need to wrap this up. My time is up. But now that the fountain of honor has spoken out, do you think this is going to translate into real action, that a lot more is going to be done, that cases of women that have fallen as a result of, and by falling really, literally dying in some cases as a result of gender-based violence, that something is going to be done, or is it another of those political statements and then we move on swiftly? Next year another report will be released by police, and who knows, the cases might be the same, perhaps even higher, or that kind of thing.
I really hope so, because you see, this takes a collective effort. It's not only it's not only words of the president that will have effect in terms of reducing violence. It's also it will take the different actors, the police, which is in charge of enforcement, you know, the lawmakers like himself, where there are, you know, gaps in legislation, you know, doing something to review, but most importantly changing the attitude of both these men like this MP and also young people who have not seen differently. So it's really a concerted effort of all of us, you know, doing our part in our families, doing our part in our communities, and also being able to intervene when we see cases of violence. Because at times you're walking and you're seeing this parent really caning a child mercilessly, you know. So it's important that you intervene and you're able to talk to this parent to say it can be done differently. At times people are so ignorant, they don't know that there's another way of how they can deal with an issue. So for me, it's really a concerted effort, media campaigns, having community meetings, you know, having religious leaders, opinion leaders, different leaders talking about it, reforming laws, particularly where it's wanting, but most important, changing our attitude. And for religious leaders, I think it's important for them continue to emphasize what Ephesians 5 verses 28 to 31 say about marriage, because it's so key in that it says that the man must love his wife, and in turn the wife must respect her husband. Now love, and you see it even goes on to say that if you love yourself, you will cherish yourself. You don't beat yourself because you love yourself. So they are saying when you love will cover a number of the weaknesses that you may find between each other. So I think it's important that religious leaders continue emphasizing that, so that when they are wedding people, when they are preaching to people, people understand that once you love your spouse, it will cover some of the weaknesses that you see. You'll find amicable ways of resolving your differences.
Clearly, the road ahead is a tough one when you have people like the Honorable Onesmus Tunamasko.
I don't know why you keep calling him honorable.
The dishonorable Onesmus Tunamasko. Anyway, hopefully things get better. Perry Aritua, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Joel.
That's it for the big story. We'll take a quick break. Morning at 10 TV continues shortly.